So Sean Carolyn is going to introduce me. You don't have to do that, dude. I'm kidding. My name is Nathen Harvey. We're here to talk about the community site. And I have a couple of other people that are going to introduce themselves when it's their turn to speak, I think. But so what we're talking about today is the supermarket, which is the brand new community site. And before we talk about why do we need a brand new community site, I thought it would be good to look at a cookbook that's currently on the community site to think about what's wrong. And the problem is this is a 40-minute talk. So I told these guys I would limit myself to 1 minute and 30 seconds. Like 90 seconds, I get to pick one cookbook and I get to tell you what is wrong with the community site. Sound good? It's too bad. I'm going to do it anyhow, good or not. All right, so I'm going to go right now. So this is the MySQL cookbook. You know what's wrong about this? First, it's a fucking lie. Oh, I did it. These ratings, there are 4 stars. That makes it sound like a pretty good cookbook, right? But it's been downloaded 23,000 times and it has been rated 27 times. Those 4 stars, not statistically relevant. But guess what else? It's been downloaded more than 23,000 times because you know why? You know how that number gets incremented? When you click that download button. How many of you have ever downloaded a cookbook from the community site by clicking the download button? It's cool, you can admit it. Stephen, Dana, and Noah. And Nathan. All right, like 3, 4 people, right? And do you know why Stephen, Dana, and Noah, and Nathan did it? Because they didn't believe me when I said that. And they're like, no, dude, watch. I click, oh, it incremented there, and then I knifed, and it didn't increment. Actually, Stephen and Noah knew that, because they knew that. Like, it's good to know that there are 6,000 versions of the MySQL cookbook. And we should have a link to every single one of them because you really want to roll back to 0.10.0 of the MySQL cookbook because that's what you had and that's what you wanted. My timer is doing weird things. It's supposed to count down and it's counting up. So I'm just going to keep going. You can follow a cookbook. You know what is really cool about the community site? Like you can see the people that are following a cookbook and then you can go and like follow that person. How many of you use the community site as one of your social networks to stay in touch with your friends? What? No, it's this chef community. We should stay in touch with one another. All right, my 90 seconds is now up. I could go on for another hour, but I won't. So this sucks, and it should be better, because we should be able to know what is a good cookbook. Is this MySQL cookbook good or not? I don't know. And the fact of the matter is that this community site that we know is wrong has looked like this for a long time. And the reason it's looked like this for a long time is because Opscode, now Chef, is a company that likes to make money because that's what companies like to do. And sometimes we take that money and we invest it in things that will help us make more money, like building Chef. And sometimes we invest it in things like working on the community site. But here's the thing, we don't ever invest enough money in working on the community site. And we take people like Noah and we say, hey, fix the community site. And then we don't talk to him for a long time. And then he gets it kind of getting better on the right track. And then we're like, stop fixing the community site. What are you doing? The community site, it's cool, man. Just let's do other things. And my biggest problem with the community site since the day before I joined Opscode and many days before I joined Opscode, the name of the site is community.opscode.com. How many of you in here consider yourselves community members? You should all raise your hand because you all are. You are community members. You're here at Chef Comp. How many of you have ever changed the functionality of the site that bears your name? Like the people that work at Chef have touched the community site. Sure, you can contribute content to it, but that's not the same as driving where we go with the community site, driving the roadmap, actually submitting features to the community site. Also, the community site, maybe it's good for finding cookbooks, but how many of you use things other than cookbooks that come from the community when you work with Chef? You know, things like knife plugins or gems. How do you find those on the community site? That's right, you don't, right? That sucks. So why don't we just open source the community site? Well, we can't because when we first built the community site, we hired in a team of people to help us build it. And they said, yo, dog, we can build it fast, but we're going to use some proprietary stuff, or we can build it in the open and it won't be done in time. And we said, make it done in time, and it wasn't. and it was proprietary. So then what? We're fucked. I did it again, sorry. We cannot just turn open the bits. And then another thing happened. We said, hey, we thought of this great way to make money. It's called Hosted Chef. And it's cool, you have to log into Hosted Chef. Hey, wait, you already log in somewhere. You log into the community site. So we don't even need to write any login functionality. Like, log into the community site and we'll just create a Hosted Chef account for you in the background. It's cool. And now we want to take the community site and open it up. And Nathan's saying, no, that's not, you're saying that's not cool, or I'm lying. It's not cool, it isn't. Because now we want to open up the community site, and in order to do that, like, we have this huge ugly spaghetti of community site and Hosted Chef. They are the same thing when it comes to authentication, and that is bad. So how are we going to solve this? We are going to throw out the baby with the bathwater. The community site goes away, but we can't just shut it down, because that would suck. So Opscode Chef is making an investment in our community site. And our investment is such, we are invested in rebuilding the community site from the ground up as an open source project so that the community can contribute to the way the community site works from day one. But we know that if we just said, fuck it, just go build a new community site, y'all, that would not be the right answer. So we needed someone to help us get this thing bootstrapped so that you could come in and start contributing to a project that was already underway. So we hired these great guys at Kramer Dev, and then we changed our name from Opscode to Chef, and they said, man, that's cool. And they changed their name from Kramer Dev to Full Stack. It's true, it's a true story. So, so these guys from Full Stack have started off on a journey to rebuild the community site. It is on GitHub right now as Opscode, because we're still Opscode, /supermarket. You can go and contribute to it right now. You can download that entire repo. You can run it locally. And I'm going to turn it over to these guys who are going to introduce themselves and talk about sort of where we are with the community site and sort of the vision of the community site. And I'll interject things, and then we're going to have lots of time at the end for Q&A, unless I took up all of our time.
No, I think you're good.
All right, good.
I'm Gabe Weaver. I'm the VP of Product at FullStack. I'm a product guy, and it's actually been pretty interesting to get to work on this project for you guys and with you guys, because I have a slightly different perspective. But it's been a blast, and I think I'm really anxious to share this with you. And I can tell by all the people here that nobody really cares about the community site. So I want to change that, and I want to do that with you guys. So.
Everyone, my name is Tristan O'Neill, and I am a software engineer at FullStack. And I've been working on Supermarket for the past 4 months or so, and it has been an absolute joy, not only because it's fun to build new things, but as someone that's new to the chef community, it's been great to learn about the community by building the community. And I look forward to working with all of you to make it even better.
So yeah, I think Tristan is going to give us an update on some of the stuff that we've done to lay the groundwork for you guys to get involved. And then we'll kind of talk about the future roadmap and kind of circle back with some questions that I have for you guys that are pretty valuable to answer.
So, everybody ready for an adventure?
Yeah.
So, because we wanted to make Supermarket something that everybody wanted to contribute to, we needed to set up a good foundation so it's actually a joy to contribute to the project. So that meant, as Nathen mentioned, completely rewriting the current community site. And the new community site, we're trying to take it in the correct direction, and these are a few things that we think will help bring it there. So best practices in all areas that we can feasibly come up with. So that starts with good test coverage. We're using our, so first of all, Supermarket is a Rails project, if that wasn't apparent already. And so we're using RSpec Capybara for acceptance tests and Factory Girl for mock data. And we have been playing around with a lot of tools, trying to discover the best tools to make Supermarket a good open source project and something that is fun and easy to work on. And so we have adopted coveralls which basically just keeps track of test coverage. And while I don't personally like the idea of, I don't think test coverage should be like, you shouldn't always go after that percent. I do think it helps you keep yourself a bit honest, and you can start to see trends over time. So I think that will help the project over its life cycle. Documentation. Actually, some people within Chef got the project initially started, and we kind of inherited at least a little bit of the code base. And luckily, the folks in Chef are really fantastic, and they started out by documenting all the things, and we've been trying to keep up with that. And we actually just also adopted, I can't remember the name of it, but basically it's something similar for to coveralls for test coverage, but it's for documentation, and it just helps keep yourself honest with how much of your code base is documented. And this is a screenshot of the documentation on YardDoc.
I actually think somebody from the community contributed that, so
Yeah.
thanks.
So we're using Travis CI for continuous integration. Actually, that, yeah. Anyways, and then we are also using Chef. There is a supermarket cookbook within the supermarket repo. And an interesting side note with that is it's actually not using any community cookbooks, because supermarket will be the definitive source of community cookbooks. So it shouldn't have to know about itself to stand itself up. So yeah, we're using Chef to continuously deploy master every 30 minutes, which has been a really great experience. And then in terms of communications, we have it's a fairly new product called Gitter, and it's actually chat built on top of the GitHub API. So there is a chat room for the ops code supermarket repo, and we use it day to day for keeping track of random communications for the project, and we welcome anyone in the community to jump in and provide feedback and ask questions. We have our public roadmap on Trello, and we're using a tool called Envision for keeping track of design and design iterations. And that's great. Envision has really been a great tool for us to get a ton of feedback, but we're still looking for even more feedback on the UI and UX direction of the project. And we're using GitHub issues for basically if anyone wants to have an open discussion about the roadmap. And we're constantly improving, and we're trying to figure out the best way to build this project right. So we started with Pivotal Tracker because it's the tool that we use internally at FullStack. We switched to LeanKit because Chef started using LeanKit internally, and unfortunately we didn't like that LeanKit didn't feel like it fit for an open source project, and it may still be able to fit, but it didn't feel like the right tool for the job. So then we thought, oh, we can just use GitHub issues, but still have some sort of flow using HuBoard. But we had it really slowed down our process, and we had a few gripes, but it's probably not the place to talk about here. So we finally settled on Trello, and it's been really great so far. And Trello boards can be completely public, so you can see, we work on this all week. You can see as we accomplish things in real time. So I think that's pretty great. So yeah, now I'm going to talk about some of the features that we've already built. So who here has signed a ICLA or CCLA? I believe the current way that works is Jira's involved, and it's not the friendliest experience. So we wanted to set out to find a way to make that a friendly experience. So within Supermarket, we've built ICLA and CCLA signing, as well as management of your signatures. So no way, so you don't have to talk directly to Chef Legal anymore, or at least that's the goal. And then part of that CLA management is integration with GitHub. So I know that a problem that Chef has, and then it's also a problem for any contributors, is determining if Chef can accept your contributions. So we built this friendly little robot called CurryBot, and it integrates with supermarket CLAs. And if you have signed a CLA or ICLA, then it says you're good to go. And if you haven't, it directs you in the to the right place to get that taken care of.
And we also watch, so when you do go sign it, then it'll add a label to the pull request that says you did sign it. So it's kind of a closed loop, which is nice.
And so we didn't want to break shit. So we built API parity with the current community site because Knife uses the current community site, Burks uses the current community site. So we've done our best to build API parity and make sure it's very well tested. So we should be good there. So another aspect to it that Nathen touched on a little bit is OCID. And this is actually something that we've worked with a few folks internally at Chef to build. And so OCID is a OAuth 2 provider, and it uses, I believe, hosted Chef as the data source for users. And so you can now log in to Supermarket using your hosted Chef account without having to have all this database ugliness going on where, you know, there's new users being created within the community site from within the code base of hosted Chef, and yeah, that's awesome. I believe that.
Yeah, so I can kind of take over here, but one of the things that we've been trying to do is make the user interface a little bit better. And this is what we started with in terms of the cookbooks directory. And it's great. There's stars everywhere. There's categories, which I've come to learn are despised for many reasons. And it's not that helpful in you guys searching out and finding cookbooks that you want to use to solve specific problems. The kind of workflows that we heard people doing is they're like, yeah, we do Google searches, we look at all these other places, and then when we know exactly what we need to do, then if we have to, we'll go to the community site, but mainly we'll just, you know, run from the console and get it all set up and kind of bypasses all the other because it's not very useful. So this is a starting point that we want to iterate from. And I think the whole goal that we're trying to do here is set up a foundation that we can use to grow from and not completely changing everything, because that would require us making a whole lot of assumptions on behalf of what you really want and need. And that's not our place to do, it's the community's place to do together. So we really want to set up the right foundation for that. This was our first assumption that we made in the iteration number one. One of our designers, Vulcans, he's not here. He threw this together. It looks pretty sweet. There's some categories on the side, some nice stats, and some nice little covers for the different cookbooks. And then we shared this with you guys. Some of you were very kind and provided lots of helpful feedback, namely that you hated the categories, that these numbers across the top were not helpful, and that the way the cookbooks were styled were not helpful. So we've been iterating. I'm not happy with this yet, but because we just shared with you guys a couple weeks ago, the wireframes, we decided instead of trying to push forward with that, we were going to stop and redesign things and continue to redesign things until it got to a point where you were happy with it because we wanted you to use it. This is the cookbooks directory. There's a nice search bar. There's nice cookbooks that are listed there with your platforms. You can see the owner and some other helpful information like downloads, followers, that sort of thing. And I actually just said today when I was putting this presentation together, I was like, why are there 400 pixels from like the very top to the first like cookbook listing? I told Vulcans that we needed to fix that, and other things like that that I want to continue to improve. There's other things in the UI too that we're really still working on. I think Noah, you provide a whole lot of helpful feedback, as well as Seth Fargo. I don't know if he's here or not, but more personalized UI views. So the cookbooks that you're following, the cookbooks that you own that you contribute to, where's the best place to find those and see the activity on those when new versions get upgraded? How do you get notified about that? And we have built in the basic kind of follow premise for Cookbook. So when you follow Cookbook on Supermarket and the Cookbook owner uploads a new version, an artifact of the new version to the Supermarket, you'll get an email notification. It'll show up in your profile, but we wanted that to be more present elsewhere in the UI, namely in the Cookbooks directory and maybe even a dashboard view. And then we're also working on a lot of different things too for what the UI should look like beyond just being a package repository. So on Envision, and there's links to all this in the README and Gitter and Trello and other places like that, but we're playing around with different content for a dashboard. What is helpful for you guys to see, to keep up with? What would you like to have readily available right when you log in somewhere, right when you look somewhere, instead of having to like dig around and fumble around to figure everything out. So that's where we're at, and I think the major goal that we're shooting for is to try to get like the basic foundation in place for you guys to start really kind of running with, so you don't have to do the boring stuff mainly. But what's left is we need to finish up the new UI and related features, and it needs to be in an acceptable quality to where you guys will want to use it. The biggest challenge, I think, or the biggest kind of headache is migrating data from the existing community site with cookbooks and then also users and CLAs, because prior to this, CLAs were managed in lots of different places. Corporate CLAs don't have any of the identifying information actually in the CLA itself other than a person's name. So if we're going to try to tie that to an account, in Supermarket itself, there's a lot of headaches that are going to come with that. And I think we've kind of mapped out a decent migration path, but what we really don't want to do is break things to the point where your experience of switching sucks, your data's lost, and it's not fun. I think we're kind of at the point where we're going to be able to wrap this up later this month, early May, turn off the old community site and switch over to Supermarket, and that will have like the base feature set that the existing community site does on Supermarket, but also provide the right foundation to accelerate that to whatever it needs to become. So beyond just kind of bringing things up to speed, I think Nathen talked about the fact that the rankings suck. I agree, they don't add value. But what I have heard from a lot of people already is how do you find cookbooks on the community site that are valuable, that are meaningful, that I would want to use. And that kind of really kind of boils down to discoverability. So what does that look like and what does improving it look like, so that you guys can find the stuff that has been validated by other people, that has been validated by the quality of the cookbook itself, by the data points that are in it and how it's written and the test coverage and like all these other things that we're playing around with. We're also going to look at building out a few more APIs and better dependency management. And as Nathen said, also other shareables like Ohio and Knife plugins. But being here this week has been kind of interesting for me because I've heard lots of things that made me think that we're not asking the right question about what the real problem is that needs to be solved by Supermarket. So some things that I heard this week that were interesting. Community cookbooks suck, and also that they're really hard. And the existing community site is not as good as it could be, to put it nicely. Cookbooks are hard. Cookbook categories are meaningless. This insert feature X is not what the community really needs. So I would like us all to get to the heart of the problem. And I want to ask you guys and have conversations with all of us. What does Supermarket need to solve? And chef community, it is a tool. You guys are the community. This is just a tool, but what problems in the community does it need to solve? And conversely, what does it not need to solve? What should it not do? And why? So we really want you guys to get involved because Chef is going to pay us forever, and they shouldn't. So we're on GitHub. The repo's up there, Opscode Supermarket. You can talk to us on Gitter, all of you guys, since it's an open source project and it's public. You all have permission to join in, talk to us. Right now we're working every day, all week on this. We have hangouts regularly every week. So on Monday afternoons, I think we have our planning meeting for the week, and we have daily stand-ups. We welcome you to join. Have no idea what that will turn into, but the more, that's the better problem solved than you guys not showing up at all. File a GitHub issue if you want to have a conversation. It's a good way to track the history of things and keep up with it ad hoc. We would love contributions, no matter what they look like, as long as they fit within the general goals that we're all working towards. We'd also love for you to be involved in planning out the roadmap. So jump in the Hangouts, help manage Trello, look at what's there, provide feedback, and then eventually, in the next few months, we really want you to own Supermarket. So we'd like you to become not just a contributor, but a collaborator, a maintainer, somebody who is shepherding the community forward in this specific tool. So one of the things that I would really like us to do is switch over to the Q&A, and I really want you to ask us challenging questions. And I want to figure out what the real problem is that it should solve, what tool the Supermarket need to turn into that would be meaningful for you guys. So, go. Yeah.
Some sort of meta moderation thereof, so that we can then begin labeling things as to, yes, these are using current best practices.
Yeah, so that's why if you notice from the UI right now, we haven't even started tackling that because of that very problem. But I don't know if Nathen knows, how do we have that discussion? How do we establish those? Because if community cookbooks are really hard because they're different and all these other things, what does a good cookbook look like? I don't know if you have any insight there, but.
Well, I mean, I think that the beauty and the challenge of Chef has always been that you can do what you want with Chef, right? So the cookbook that is the right cookbook is the cookbook that solves your problem right now, right? And so it can be very difficult to come up with what are those best practices. When I do a lot of teaching of people that are brand new to Chef, and the best practice that I teach them is you're going to refactor your code, right? You should embrace that from day one, because I can guarantee that the cookbook you write today, 6 months from now, either you will say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I wrote that thing, or you are wrong, right? One of those two things happens 6 months later. But if we look at the cookbooks on the community site, like what makes a good cookbook? Is a good cookbook a cookbook that supports many, many platforms? I don't know. Do you have a need for many, many platforms? Maybe not, right? Probably not. So then how do we solve for that? And there are certainly things that are more than you're gonna refactor it, dude. That's the best practice. There's something between there and like, this is the size and shape of a good cookbook. So I think it is important that we as a community start to, or continue to, discuss what do those things look like. I think that we're finding tools like Rubocop, like Food Critic, that are pushing us in an automated fashion to have these discussions. But do they go far enough? You could argue probably not, right? So, but I would love to, like, what does make a good cookbook? What do you think? Right. Yep. Sure.
Yeah, I think that might be part of it, and that's why I kind of wanted to bring it up. Where do you guys go to figure all this stuff out right now? Is it a bunch of different places, or would you as a community like to have an authoritative source that you all own and work on and argue out like incessantly over long periods of time about the minute details?
Can I,
which could be good.
Yeah, can I say something about that also? Like internally at Chef, since I joined a year and a half ago, we've written 18 best practices for writing cookbooks. And guess how many we've published? Yeah, that's right, 0, right? Like we just get into this ridiculous yak shave internally, and then we just get really scared to publish anything, because if we push it out, then it becomes authoritative, and we can't even agree internally. Maybe we should just suck it up and have that discussion with everyone.
I think part of too what might be helpful is the use case kind of argument. It's like you can classify best practices by use case, like when you want to use it, where. I think that's something that Noah was talking about, before, is like, yeah, it should be extensible, it should be something that can be reused, but you're definitely going to have to modify it for specific use cases. So what are the best practices around that? When should you not? And those are things that, I wouldn't call them standards, but best practices are definitely good for a community to have, because it's like a starting point. It's an artifact that people argue over, which is good because it starts conversation.
We had another question also, or? Mm-hmm.
It's good feedback. Yep.
I know I'd like to see, rather than just the MySQL, I'd like to see searching for MySQL and then be able to have a registered I need to scratch this itch, so I want to here's why, or here's why here's my I've gone to the community site. They've got a version of the book, but it's not as good as the one that others signed up collectors. Yeah, namespacing would be great. Yeah. However, I know that's challenging to work out.
It's
But
yeah.
I think if you go to a page and say like, here are all the people who have registered that they have a license.
Yeah. I think you actually like broke down 3 different problems, which was kind of interesting. Is how do you share what you think would be better for an existing cookbook if it doesn't solve the problem you want? And then it's the like, how does that get represented in supermarket and to the community? Is it name spacing? What value does that add? I don't know all the answers to that, but I think I've had some spirited conversations with Nathan about it, and I know some of the community members have had spirited conversations about the need for it. But as like a product person who looks holistically, the value that it adds right now in terms of like all the retooling that would have to happen to other things, it's hard for me to like fully understand the value in. I mean, you can break into it a little bit more if you want. But.
Sure. I mean, I think that frankly, my biggest concern with namespacing is now we have 27 MySQL cookbooks. But guess what? We already have 27 MySQL cookbooks, right? I think it's not an easy problem to solve. I think that certainly there are lots of tools that would be impacted, right? So if we think about just the knife tool and the API, like how do we know about the namespace? But then you look in the code, and if I want to write a library for my cookbook, and it has to have a namespace now in that library, and now my code looks really ugly. So maybe we should start by fixing that, the way that the cookbook works. So, like, I don't know. Noah, you don't have any opinions on this, do you? Okay, good.
So what you're describing is namespacing within ship, which is really the same kind of namespacing within supermarkets.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the way that I phrased it before is one of the problems in supermarket. Okay, I can say I think pretty reliably, supermarket needs to solve this. Right now, the supermarket will need to solve this. Right now, the name of the record on the supermarket is tied to the name of the cookbook. And that's super inconvenient because we have a culture of cookbook names being useful. And I really like that culture as opposed to like Ruby Gems or PyGuy where people get creative. It just sucks. And you end up with like gems and Python libraries named after vegetables and whatnot, and it's terrible. Like, what the hell is a Django? Honestly, I know what it is, but how many people know what a Django is?
I thought it was a DJ Ango. No? Oh, damn it.
It's Django. So, one of the things that needs to get done is disconnecting the name of the record on the supermarket, on the community site, from the name of the cookbook, preferably in a structured way so that the name of the cookbook is still part of it, but that there is still some kind of unique element on there. A really simple way to do that is the username, and you get GitHub foundation. That's still totally disconnected. Like, Workshelf will have to be aware of this, and if you use 2 records from the community site that happen to have the same cookbook name, like Workshelf needs thrown out. Like, chef don't know how to cope with this.
Well, there's a more finite set of flavors than there are of.
A new attribute, new term, it can hold that space. So if there's 27 MySQLs, they each stay in the MySQL, but they each have a different designation of the family, flavor, or version. I only use version, but
That's all dealing with not the one that most people actually use, because I don't do it on GitHub, but like Fletcher would just have to rename his cookbook when he wanted to upload it, and that kind of sucks. No one really wants to do that, because then the name's not useful anymore.
Well, and the other thing I think that we're also talking about specifically in that case is like, all right, so we add namespacing. How do I know which is the one that the community likes best, right? Because like the Redis cookbook, which Redis cookbook should I use? Yeah.
I think this is totally my fault, I'm pretty sure it crashes.
But
Like name squatty, right? Like I want to contribute to cookbook that seems decent, and there's something that has the right name that was uploaded once 3 years ago, and nobody's done anything.
Sean Romero
Right.
likes to point out there's a thing called Apache. Like,
Mhm.
the main one is called Apache too, which is weird. We don't have like a cookbook called MySQL 5.
Right.
The name Apache is currently taken by a thing last updated in 2012 with the only thing it does is configure XCGI.
But you had a question over here. You wanted to argue, I think.
No, I was just, what would happen if you select market and it said, and the one with the highest downloads, show the top there.
Right. So.
That's a problem about like services, right? Like so, I did a really shitty MySQL cookbook, but it was the first one out there. It gets a bunch of downloads. You come along and do one that's like 50 times more awesome, but now it's on like supermarket or someone to figure out like doing weird things like every fifth time yours comes up at the top, you know, like it's
And that's what we're talking about, building in the ranking kind of scale to where it takes attributes from actually data within the cookbook itself, plus behavioral things from the community to like arrive at a score that's reflective of how valuable the community feels it. So,
The score is probably, I don't know if I'll ever get quite that far, but some kind of
I mean, what?
quality metrics.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think there needs to be.
I don't think we should get into like the details of what quality metrics to use.
Yeah.
Like that's a
Right.
wrap.
Yeah, yeah.
I think there's general agreement that we need both community health metrics and individual health metrics for cookbook. The community health metrics will be largely driven by like what Nathen thinks reflects well on the community and like makes investors reduce their blood pressure.
Yeah. Like we should have people put more money into our community. That's important.
But I would say too, like, what if there's the mechanism, like right now we're making it really easy so that an admin can change the owner of a cookbook if need. If there's an abandoned cookbook or something like that, we can change
Yeah.
just a little bit.
Do right now, there is no governance policy.
Right. And that's
Exactly.
another thing, right? There should be a governance policy. Stephen Danny, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just, I don't know. I've been on both sides of the I just think as a community, we need to step it up. If it's a really big policy that like follows some other like you could just email them and have a conversation.
That's a ridiculous idea.
Like I have spiked the system being Facebook communicated with the good intention of writing Facebook and there's nothing there.
Right.
And if like someone emailed me and was like, dude, you suck, you haven't uploaded this, I would be like, yours right now. Like,
Yeah.
upload it now.
Sure.
I
Cool.
did that. There was someone.
I'm not saying it works right now, I'm saying like, it's a community problem that it doesn't work.
Yeah, well, it works sometimes. Like there was something that somebody hadn't updated in a long time, and I like contacted them and said, hey, can I put my cookbook here? It does about the same thing, and they were like, cool, and it happened. But like, there needs to be some policy to allow it when like the person doesn't reply, or like in the good case, like cool, you email the person and then everything's great, but like everything's not gonna be great.
And even that, but that's not
So
like my Jenkins cookbook and the opposite of Jenkins cookbook will never be reconciled. Like,
Sure.
they are totally
Different.
versions.
So let's just say
So-
we solve this namespacing thing through like people
Yeah.
solutions or technical solutions. I think you had a question before, maybe some of that came up.
I was just going to speak against that. So going back to the point you made, good cookbook is a cookbook that sells your problem.
Mhm.
Your problem is this.
Of course it is. Right.
So
lettuce on all and one something slightly different. So if we introduce the one-set fitness, only frequency by the owner, or it's linked to the GitHub repo, and a lot of these always go away. So some type of explanation that's only in supermarket.
Right.
And it's just going to make it a lot easier for us to deal with the reality of the concept. It would be different if we were trying to build the one true recipe for lettuce that covers all versions and all platforms and all uses.
Right. So, unfortunately, we're out of time, and yeah, like we could talk for the rest of ChefConf about this. But what I would like to do to sort of summarize this briefly, if you guys don't mind, I'm gonna do a quick summary.
I might add something.
All right. Yeah. You please do. I think what has happened in the past N years is we in Ops Code in Chefland have had a lot of these conversations internally, and we have not had, and we've had a lot of these conversations with the community, and we have not really done anything tangible about them. And the thing that gets me super excited right now is that we are rebuilding the supermarket, and as a community, we are contributing to that process. We are seeing a crazy amount of feedback on just the mock-ups, and we've seen iterations on those mock-ups based on your feedback. So I want to thank you all for your thoughts, for giving us that feedback, giving us code in some cases. I think that this is putting us on the right path towards the supermarket. It is going to hurt. It's going to be painful for us to get to a place where we are all happy with it. And we may never get to that place. But the thing is that as we go down this journey, I think it can strengthen us as a community. And I think that's the key nugget. I think the other thing that I will say is that the full stack team, and there's more full stackers here, have gotten a lot out of the last 36 hours coming and talking face-to-face with members of the community about this project. And I think that is also super awesome. So I'm really glad that you guys came out, and I want to keep these conversations going. But we have to stop it now. But keep the conversation going.
But I was going to say, we are around every day, so I'm putting the onus on you guys to step up and have the conversations with us and with your tool that is going to be Supermarket. We're in Gitter, we're in Trello. We will drop whatever we're doing to talk to you and to solve problems that need to be solved, because that's what we want to do, and we feel like that's meaningful. So.
And tell your chef friends about Supermarket, because we need, you do not represent all of the chef community, so.
Yep, that's right. Thank you very much.
Thanks.